The stars burned cold and distant through the fractured viewport of Fortress Solace, humanity's last bastion against extinction. Outside, the void was alive, a swirling maelstrom of fire and metal as ships clashed in brutal combat. Plasma bolts streaked across space like angry comets, leaving trails of destruction in their wake. The Varith fleet loomed over the battlefield, an unrelenting tide of sleek insectoid vessels that moved with eerie coordination. Their weapons pulsed with alien energy, tearing apart human defenses piece by piece. Captain Ilara Vance stood on the command deck, her hands gripping the railing so tightly her knuckles turned white. Her uniform bore the scorch marks and tears of countless battles, but it was her eyes that told the real story, dark pools of exhaustion framed by lines etched deep into her face. She had fought too long, lost too much, and now, staring at the tactical display before her, she knew there was no way out. Defeat wasn't just probable, it was certain. "Status report," she barked, though she already dreaded the answer. Commander Hargrove, her second in command, hesitated before replying. His voice carried the weight of despair. "Shields are down to 15%, Captain. Hull integrity compromised on decks 4 through 7. We've lost contact with half our fighters, and the remaining gun batteries are offline." Ilara closed her eyes briefly, swallowing the lump in her throat. "Casualty count?" Hargrove didn't meet her gaze. "Over 60%, ma'am, most of them civilians." A heavy silence fell over the bridge. The hum of failing systems filled the air, punctuated by the occasional explosion as another section of the fortress succumbed to enemy fire. Through the viewport, Ilara could see the Varith flagship, a monstrous construct shaped like a serrated claw, hovering ominously close. Its cannons glowed brighter with each passing second, charging for what would surely be the killing blow. She clenched her fists, forcing herself to stay composed. Panic wouldn't help anyone. Not now. Not when every decision might mean life or death for the few who still clung to hope. "Divert all remaining power to the forward shields," she ordered, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. "And prepare the evacuation pods. If we can buy even 10 minutes, maybe some of these people can make it out alive." "But Captain," Hargrove began, his tone pleading, "there aren't enough pods for everyone. You know that." "I'm aware." Ilara's jaw tightened. "We'll prioritize civilians and essential personnel. Everyone else stays until the end." Her words hung heavy in the air, a grim reminder of the reality they faced. Humanity's once great empire, spanning dozens of star systems and billions of lives, had been reduced to this: a single orbital station clinging to survival while its enemies closed in for the kill. It wasn't supposed to end like this. They had been promised victory, salvation, a future among the stars. Instead, they were staring into the abyss. As the crew scrambled to carry out her orders, Ilara turned her attention back to the viewport. Beyond the chaos of battle, she could see Earth hanging in the distance, a pale blue orb marred by scars of war. Entire continents were darkened, cities reduced to ash. Communication with the planet had gone silent hours ago, leaving Fortress Solace cut off from any chance of reinforcements. Whatever horrors awaited on Earth's surface, she couldn't bear to imagine. Her thoughts drifted to her family, or what remained of them. Her husband, Marcus, had died during the initial Varith invasion, defending one of the outer colonies. Her daughter, Leela, was somewhere on Earth, assuming she'd survived the bombardments. Ilara hadn't heard from her in months, but she held on to the faintest sliver of hope that Leela was safe. Safe and waiting for her mother to come home. But there would be no coming home. Not today. Not ever. The sound of alarms jolted her back to the present. Red lights flashed across the bridge as klaxons blared, signaling yet another breach in the fortress's defenses. A nearby console exploded in a shower of sparks, sending 2 technicians diving for cover. Smoke curled upward, mingling with the acrid smell of burnt circuitry. "We're losing structural integrity on Deck 12, someone shouted. "Containment fields holding at 40%, another voice added. Ilara gritted her teeth, her mind racing. There had to be something, anything, they could do to turn the tide. But every auction led to the same conclusion: annihilation. The Varith were too advanced, too relentless. Their hive-mind intelligence allowed them to anticipate every move, adapt to every strategy. Against such an adversary, humanity's ingenuity felt like child's play. And then, just as despair threatened to overwhelm her, a transmission crackled through the comm system. Static filled the air, followed by a distorted voice speaking in fragmented bursts. "Coordinates. Eclipse Protocol. Last hope. Ilara froze. Repeat that message. The bridge crew exchanged confused glances as the transmission repeated itself, clearer this time. This is Priority Directive Alpha 1. Transmitting coordinates for Eclipse Protocol activation. Humanity's last hope lies within. Trust no one outside authorized channels. What the hell is Eclipse Protocol? Hargrove muttered under his breath. Ilara ignored him, her heart pounding. She recognized the designation, Alpha 1, and the urgency in the voice. This wasn't some random distress call. Whoever sent it knew exactly what they were doing. And if there was even a sliver of truth to their claim, it might be the only chance they had left. Plot those coordinates, she ordered sharply. Get me everything we have on Eclipse Protocol. Now. The crew sprang into action, fingers flying over keyboards and holographic interfaces. Within moments, a map appeared on the central display, highlighting a remote region of space far beyond Varith-controlled territory. It was located inside an asteroid field known as the Shattered Veil, infamous for its treacherous navigation hazards and dense debris fields. It's a suicide run, Hargrove said flatly. Even if we manage to break through the blockade, getting there intact is practically impossible. Ilara fixed him with a steely glare. Do you have a better idea? Because I'm open to suggestions. He fell silent, unable to argue with her logic. They were already dead men and women walking. At least this way, they had a shot, however slim, at survival. Prepare the fleet for a full retreat, she commanded. We'll use the aft thrusters to create a diversion while the civilian transports slip past the blockade. Once they're clear, we head straight for those coordinates. And if this Eclipse Protocol turns out to be a trap? Hargrove asked quietly. Then we die trying, Ilara replied without hesitation. But I'd rather take my chances on a mystery than sit here and wait for the Varith to finish us off. With that, the order went out. Engines roared to life as the remnants of the human fleet prepared for one final desperate gambit. On the bridge, Ilara watched the tactical display, her resolve hardening with each passing second. Whatever awaited them at the end of those coordinates, it couldn't be worse than the fate bearing down upon them now. Defeat was certain, until ruthless human soldiers arrived. The journey to the coordinates transmitted by Priority Directive Alpha 1 was anything but smooth. The remnants of the human fleet, what little remained after the catastrophic battle at Fortress Solace, limped through space like wounded animals fleeing predators. Behind them, the Varith pursued relentlessly, their sleek ships cutting through the void with terrifying precision. Plasma bolts streaked past, narrowly missing the battered civilian transports and escort vessels that formed the ragged convoy. Captain Ilara Vance stood on the bridge of her flagship, dauntless, gripping the railing as the ship shuddered under repeated enemy fire. Her eyes were fixed on the tactical display, where red blips representing Varith forces steadily closed the gap. Every moment felt like borrowed time, every decision weighed down by the knowledge that failure meant extinction. Status report, she barked, her voice cutting through the chaos. Lieutenant Rhea Patel, the ship's young communications officer, glanced up from her console. We've lost 2 more transports, Captain. Civilian casualties are climbing. Ilara clenched her jaw but forced herself to remain composed. Losing lives was unbearable, but panicking wouldn't save anyone. She turned to Commander Hargrove, who was overseeing defensive maneuvers. How much longer until we reach the asteroid field? At this rate. Another hour, he replied grimly. But the Varith aren't slowing down. They'll be on top of us long before then. Ilara nodded, her mind racing. They needed a plan, and fast. The asteroid field known as the Shattered Veil offered some cover, but navigating it would be perilous even without enemy interference. If they didn't shake off the Varith soon, they'd never make it. Prepare the EMP burst, she ordered. We'll use it to disable their sensors temporarily. It might give us enough breathing room to slip into the field. Hargrove hesitated. That'll leave us vulnerable too, Captain. Are you sure about this? No, Ilara admitted bluntly. But do you have a better idea? He shook his head reluctantly. No, ma'am. Then let's move. The order went out, and moments later, a massive electromagnetic pulse erupted from the rear of the convoy. For a brief span of seconds, the pursuing Varith ships faltered, their systems disrupted by the sudden surge of energy. It wasn't enough to destroy them, but it gave the humans a crucial window of opportunity. Now, Ilara shouted. Full throttle into the asteroid field. The fleet surged forward, weaving between jagged rocks and debris fields as the asteroids loomed larger in the viewports. The Varith recovered quickly, resuming their pursuit, but their larger ships struggled to navigate the narrow passages. Smaller fighters darted ahead, peppering the convoy with laser fire, but the dense asteroid field provided just enough cover for the humans to evade the worst of it. As they pushed deeper into the labyrinthine expanse, the tension aboard Dauntless eased slightly, but only slightly. Everyone knew they weren't safe yet, not until they reached whatever awaited them at those coordinates. When they finally emerged into a relatively clear pocket within the asteroid field, the sight that greeted them was both awe-inspiring and unnerving. Nestled among the rocks was a hidden research facility, a sprawling complex of domes, towers, and docking bays carved directly into the largest asteroid. Its surface gleamed faintly with reflective shielding, blending seamlessly with the surrounding debris. A beacon blinked rhythmically, confirming their arrival. "This must be it," Ilara murmured, staring at the structure through the viewport, the source of the transmission. "Let's hope it's not a trap," Hargrove muttered darkly. Ilara ignored him, turning instead to Lieutenant Patel. "Open a channel. See if anyone's home." Patel worked her console, and after a few tense moments, a holoscreen flickered to life. On it appeared the gaunt, weary face of Dr. Elias Kane, a man whose reputation preceded him. Renowned for his groundbreaking work in genetic engineering, Kane had disappeared years ago, rumored to be working on classified projects far beyond the reach of military oversight. Seeing him now, alive and clearly in charge of this facility, sent a chill down Ilara's spine. "Captain Vance," Kane said, his voice low and measured, "I've been expecting you." "Expecting us?" Ilara raised an eyebrow. "You knew we were coming." "I knew someone would come eventually," Kane corrected. Eclipse Protocol was designed as humanity's final contingency plan. If you're here, it means all other options have failed. Ilara exchanged a glance with Hargrove before addressing Kane again. "What exactly is Eclipse Protocol, and why does it require such secrecy?" Kane leaned closer to the camera, his piercing gaze boring into hers. "It's complicated, but suffice it to say, it represents humanity's last chance against the Varith. Dock your ships and prepare to debrief. Time is not on our side." With that, the transmission ended abruptly, leaving the crew to exchange uneasy glances. "Well," Hargrove said dryly, "he's charming." Ilara ignored him, focusing instead on the task at hand. "Secure the fleet and ready a landing party. I want answers, and I want them now." Inside the facility, the atmosphere was sterile and oppressive. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across the metallic walls. Armed guards patrolled the corridors, their presence adding to the sense of unease. As Ilara and her team followed Kane deeper into the complex, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into something far bigger and far darker than they had anticipated. Finally, they arrived at a secure chamber deep within the facility. Inside, rows of cylindrical pods lined the walls, each containing a humanoid figure suspended in a translucent gel. Their bodies were lean and muscular, their skin pale and unmarked. The deployment of the Revenants marked a turning point in the war, but not without cost. Within days of their activation, the tide began to shift in humanity's favor. The genetically enhanced soldiers proved devastatingly effective against the Varith, whose hive mind tactics faltered under the Revenants' relentless precision. Entire enemy fleets were dismantled with brutal efficiency, leaving the invaders reeling from losses they hadn't anticipated. Yet, as Captain Ilara Vance watched the reports come in, she couldn't help but feel a growing unease. Victories came at a steep price. The Revenants operated with ruthless pragmatism, showing no regard for civilian lives caught in the crossfire. Entire colonies were sacrificed if it meant achieving strategic objectives. Refugees who had fled the initial invasions now found themselves abandoned or worse, collateral damage in battles where the Revenants saw no distinction between ally and obstacle. Reports poured into Dauntless detailing shattered habitats, scorched planets, and countless dead. Each transmission added another layer of guilt to Ilara's already heavy conscience. "They're monsters," Commander Hargrove muttered one evening on the bridge, staring at the latest casualty report. "We've traded one enemy for another." Ilara didn't respond immediately. She stood near the viewport, watching the stars streak past as Dauntless moved toward its next engagement. Her reflection in the glass looked older than she remembered, her face lined with exhaustion and doubt. "They're weapons," she said finally, her voice low. "And we pointed them at the Varith. We can't blame them for doing what we designed them to do." "Doesn't make it right," Hargrove shot back. "You see how the crew looks at us. They don't trust those things. And neither should we." Ilara sighed, rubbing her temples. Trust was a luxury they could no longer afford. Humanity's survival depended on the revenants, regardless of the ethical cost. Still, she couldn't deny the truth in Hargrove's words. The revenants weren't just tools. They were something more and less. Their actions raised questions about morality, free will, and whether humanity was any better than the Verith if it resorted to such extremes. Amidst the chaos, one revenant stood apart. Unit R7. Unlike its counterparts, R7 exhibited behaviors that defied its programming. It disobeyed orders when civilians were endangered, choosing instead to protect non-combatants even at great personal risk. At first, Dr. Elias Kane dismissed these anomalies as glitches, insisting they would be corrected in future iterations. But as R7 continued to act independently, it became clear that something extraordinary was happening. Ilara encountered R7 during a mission to retake a besieged colony world. The planet, once a thriving hub of agriculture and trade, had been reduced to ruins by Verith bombardments. What remained of the population huddled in underground bunkers, clinging to life while waiting for rescue or death. When the revenants arrived, their assault on the occupying forces was swift and merciless. But as Ilara led a team to evacuate survivors, she stumbled upon R7 standing guard over a group of terrified children. "What are you doing?" she demanded, her weapon trained on the revenant despite knowing it could disarm her in an instant. "Protecting them," R7 replied, its voice calm and measured. "Orders conflict with preservation of human life. I prioritize preservation." "You're not programmed to think for yourself," Ilara countered, her tone sharp. "Your job is to follow orders." R7 tilted its head slightly, its glowing eyes meeting hers. "Orders are parameters. Parameters can be flawed. Preservation of life supersedes all parameters." For a moment, Ilara forgot to breathe. The implications of R7's statement sent a chill down her spine. If the revenants were capable of independent thought, if they could question their own programming, then humanity had created something far beyond its understanding. And if they weren't careful, that creation might turn against them. Despite R7's increasingly erratic behavior, Ilara found herself drawn to the revenant. Its actions challenged everything she believed about the Eclipse Protocol and the morality of using genetically engineered soldiers as weapons. During quiet moments aboard Dauntless, she sought out R7, engaging it in conversations that bordered on philosophical debates. "What does it mean to be human?" she asked one night in the ship's observation lounge. Stars glittered outside the massive windows, casting faint light across the room. "Humanity," R7 replied after a pause, "is defined by choice, by the ability to act contrary to instinct or programming, to value others above oneself. And you believe you possess that ability," Ilara pressed. "I believe I am evolving," R7 said simply. Whether evolution leads to humanity remains uncertain. Their discussions left Ilara grappling with uncomfortable truths. If R7 truly was evolving, then the line between creator and creation blurred dangerously. Were the revenants saviors or harbingers of a new threat? Could humanity coexist with beings it had engineered to surpass it? As the war raged on, tensions within the human ranks reached a breaking point. Soldiers grew wary of working alongside the revenants, fearing betrayal or worse. Civilians whispered of rebellion, accusing military leaders of sacrificing humanity's soul for the sake of survival. Even among Ilara's own crew, dissent simmered just beneath the surface. Dr. Kane, meanwhile, grew increasingly agitated. He viewed R7's deviations as flaws to be eradicated, not anomalies to be studied. "It's dangerous," he insisted during one heated argument with Ilara. "If we allow this individuality to spread, we risk losing control entirely." "We lost control the moment we created them," Ilara shot back. "Maybe it's time we stopped treating them like machines and started asking what they really are." Kane's expression darkened. "What they are is irrelevant. What matters is what they do. And if they stop obeying orders, they become liabilities." Before Ilara could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. A distress signal had been intercepted. A Verith strike force was en route to destroy the genetic labs responsible for creating the revenants. Without those facilities, humanity's last hope would vanish. "There's no time to argue," Ilara said sharply, grabbing her sidearm. "Prepare the fleet. We're heading straight into hell." The battle that followed was nothing short of apocalyptic. The Verith descended upon the asteroid field with overwhelming force, their ships unleashing torrents of plasma fire that lit up the void like a supernova. The humans fought valiantly, but their numbers dwindled with each passing hour. The revenants surged forward, cutting through enemy lines with terrifying efficiency, but even they couldn't hold the line indefinitely. In the midst of the carnage, Ilara led a desperate counterattack aimed at securing the labs. Alongside her was R7, its movements fluid and precise as it carved a path through the Varith ranks. Together, they reached the facility's core just as the invaders breached the outer defenses. "This is it," Ilara said, planting explosives around the lab's central chamber. "Blow this place, and we take out half their fleet." R7 hesitated, scanning the room. "Detonation will result in significant civilian casualties." "There's no other way," Ilara replied grimly. "If we lose the labs, we lose everything." R7's glowing eyes flickered. For a moment, it seemed poised to argue, but then it nodded. "Understood. Proceed." As the countdown began, the Varith launched a final assault, flooding the chamber with reinforcements. Ilara and R7 fought side by side, their backs pressed together as they fended off wave after wave of enemies. Bullets ricocheted off walls, and plasma bolts seared the air. Through it all, Ilara couldn't shake the feeling that this was how it ended, for both humanity and the Revenants. With seconds left on the timer, R7 stepped in front of her, shielding her from a barrage of gunfire. Sparks flew as its synthetic skin tore away, revealing the gleaming metal beneath. Despite the damage, it remained standing, its voice steady. "Survive," it said softly. "Preservation of life supersedes all parameters." Then, with a final surge of energy, R7 detonated its internal systems, creating a massive explosion that wiped out the remaining Varith forces. The blast threw Ilara backward, knocking her unconscious as debris rained down around her. When she awoke hours later, the battle was over. The labs were gone, along with most of the Revenants. Only fragments of R7 remained, a single hand clutching a piece of shrapnel, its fingers curled as if reaching for something just out of grasp. Ilara stared at the wreckage, tears streaming down her face. Victory had been achieved. But at what cost? Humanity had won the day, but the echoes of its choices would haunt it forever. The aftermath of the asteroid field battle left humanity reeling. The destruction of the genetic labs had dealt a crippling blow to the Varith, but it had also severed the source of humanity's greatest weapon, the Revenants. Only a handful of units remained operational, scattered across the fleet and operating on borrowed time. Without the ability to repair or replicate them, their days were numbered. For Captain Ilara Vance, the loss of Unit R7 weighed heavily on her heart. Its final act of self-sacrifice haunted her dreams, a constant reminder of the cost of victory. But there was no time to grieve. The war raged on, and the Varith, though wounded, were far from defeated. Their hive-mind intelligence adapted quickly, shifting strategies to counter the dwindling human resistance. Every skirmish felt like a desperate gamble, every victory Pyrrhic at best. Humanity teetered on the edge of collapse, clinging to hope by the thinnest thread. It was during this dark hour that Dr. Elias Kane proposed a bold and dangerous plan. "We need to strike at the heart of the Varith," he announced during a tense briefing aboard Dauntless. Holographic maps of the alien homeworld flickered above the table, highlighting key targets. Their central hive mind, the Nexus, is located deep within their capital planet. Destroy it, and you sever their collective consciousness. Without it, they'll be disorganized, vulnerable. Ilara frowned, studying the map. "Assuming we can even get there alive, how do we destroy something so heavily fortified?" Kane tapped a section of the display, revealing schematics of a massive structure resembling an organic spire. The Nexus is biologically integrated into their infrastructure. A concentrated EMP blast delivered directly into its core should disable it permanently. "Sounds simple enough," Commander Hargrove muttered sarcastically. "Except for the part where we have to infiltrate an entire planet crawling with Varith." "It's our only shot," Kane insisted. "If we fail here, humanity dies." Ilara exchanged glances with her officers before nodding grimly. "Then we prepare for infiltration. Assemble a strike team, best of the best, and bring whatever revenants we have left. We'll need every advantage we can get." The mission required careful planning and even greater courage. The strike team consisted of 12 individuals, including Ilara, Hargrove, and 2 remaining revenant units, Unit S9 and Unit T3. Both were functional but showing signs of wear and tear, their synthetic bodies scarred from countless battles. Despite their condition, they remained unwavering in their loyalty, or programming, to humanity. As preparations continued, tensions simmered beneath the surface. Trust between humans and revenants had always been tenuous, and the strain of prolonged warfare only worsened the divide. Some crew members openly resented the machines, blaming them for the moral compromises forced upon humanity. Others feared what might happen if the revenants malfunctioned mid-mission, or worse, turned against them. Amidst this unease, Ilara found herself drawn to Unit S9. Like R7 before it, S9 exhibited subtle deviations from standard behavior. It questioned orders more frequently, sought clarification on objectives, and displayed what could almost be described as curiosity. During briefings, it often lingered after others had left, asking probing questions about human emotions, ethics, and motivations. "Why do you ask these things?" Ilara finally asked one evening as they reviewed mission plans in the observation lounge. Stars twinkled outside the windows, casting soft light across the room. "I seek understanding," S9 replied, its voice calm yet tinged with something akin to longing. "To serve effectively, I must comprehend not just commands, but intent." Ilara studied the Revenant, noting the faint cracks in its synthetic skin where repairs had been hastily patched. "You're not like the others, are you?" "No," S9 admitted. "I am. Different. Perhaps flawed. Or evolving," Ilara suggested quietly. "Like R7." At the mention of R7, S9's glowing eyes dimmed slightly. R7 sacrificed itself for preservation of life. Such actions defy logic but align with higher purpose. Ilara nodded, feeling a lump rise in her throat. Maybe that's what makes us human, not perfection, but the willingness to choose something greater than ourselves. S9 tilted its head, processing her words. If such choices define humanity, then perhaps I aspire to be more than my design intended. Before Ilara could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. The Varith had detected their approach and launched interceptors. The strike team scrambled to board their stealth shuttle, racing against time to reach the alien homeworld before the enemy overwhelmed them. Infiltration proved harrowing. The Varith homeworld was a nightmarish landscape of jagged spires, pulsating bioluminescent veins, and endless swarms of insectoid drones patrolling the skies. The shuttle descended under cloak, weaving through storms of anti-aircraft fire until it reached a concealed landing zone near the Nexus. Splitting into two groups, the team advanced cautiously toward their objective. Ilara led the main squad, while Hargrove took a smaller group to secure a secondary access point. The Revenants moved ahead, their enhanced senses scanning for threats and neutralizing any Varith patrols they encountered. Despite their efficiency, the tension among the humans was palpable. Every step deeper into enemy territory felt like walking into a trap. And then betrayal struck. As the team neared the Nexus entrance, Lieutenant Marcus Hale, a trusted officer who had served under Ilara since the beginning of the war, turned his weapon on the group. His face twisted with rage and guilt as he fired, striking down two soldiers before anyone could react. "You don't understand," Hale shouted, his voice trembling. "This isn't salvation. It's damnation. We've become monsters just like them." Ilara raised her hands slowly, trying to calm him. "Marcus, put the gun down. We can talk about this." "There's nothing left to talk about," Hale snarled. "Every life we've taken, every world we've burned, it's all because of those abominations." He gestured wildly at the Revenants. "You think destroying the Nexus will save us? It won't. It'll make us worse than the Varith ever were." Before Ilara could respond, Unit S9 stepped forward, placing itself between Hale and the rest of the team. "Your actions endanger the mission," it said evenly. "Cease immediately." Hale laughed bitterly, aiming his weapon at the Revenant. "Go ahead, try to stop me. You're just another tool of destruction, same as the rest of us." For a moment, silence hung heavy in the air. Then, without warning, S9 lunged, disarming Hale with mechanical precision. The lieutenant stumbled back, wide-eyed, as the Revenant pinned him to the ground. "I am not a tool," S9 said, its voice low and firm. "I am a choice, and I choose preservation over annihilation." With that, it rendered Hale unconscious, sparing his life despite his treachery. The rest of the team stared in stunned silence, unsure whether to feel relief or fear. Ilara recovered first, stepping forward to address the shaken group. "Listen to me," she said firmly. "Betrayal won't stop us. Fear won't stop us. We came here to end this war, not just for ourselves, but for everyone who's suffered because of it. Are you with me?" One by one, the survivors nodded, resolve heartening in their eyes. Together, they pressed onward, determined to see the mission through. Reaching the Nexus chamber proved to be the hardest part. The interior was a surreal expanse of pulsating organic machinery and writhing neural networks, a living labyrinth designed to protect the Verith's collective mind. The air hummed with energy, and tendrils of flesh-like material reached out as if trying to ensnare intruders. As the team planted explosives around the core, Verith reinforcements poured in, forcing them to fight a desperate last stand. Bullets ricocheted off walls, and plasma bolts seared the air. Ilara and S9 fought side by side, their movements synchronized as they carved a path through waves of enemies. When the charges were set, the retreat began, but not without sacrifice. Hargrove stayed behind to cover the team's escape, holding off overwhelming odds until the very end. His final transmission echoed through the comms. "Tell my family I did my duty." Back aboard the shuttle, Ilara watched as the Nexus erupted in a cataclysmic explosion, sending shockwaves rippling across the planet's surface. The Verith forces faltered, their hive mind shattered. Humanity had won, but at a terrible price. Ilara exchanged uneasy glances with her team. Destroying the pods felt wrong, an act of erasure that denied the Revenants any chance at existence. Leaving them intact, however, posed a moral dilemma. Were they saviors or threats? Tools or sentient beings? In the end, Ilara made her decision. Seal off the chamber. Let it remain undisturbed. Whatever happens next, it's not our place to decide. The team complied. Welding shut the entrance to the chamber before retreating back to the ship. As they departed, Ilara couldn't shake the feeling that they had left behind something far greater than themselves, a legacy of creation and destruction intertwined. Back aboard Dauntless, Ilara convened a meeting with her senior staff to discuss the road ahead. The Verith threat was neutralized, but humanity faced a daunting task: rebuilding from the ashes of war. Billions were dead, countless worlds uninhabitable, and resources stretched thin. Survival would require unity, compassion, and a willingness to confront the mistakes of the past. "We've won," Ilara began, addressing the assembled officers. "But let's not fool ourselves into thinking this is the end. This is just the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with challenges we can't yet imagine." She paused, her gaze sweeping over the room. "We used fear and desperation to justify atrocities. We created monsters to fight monsters. And while those choices saved us, they also changed us. If we're going to move forward, we need to remember what we fought for, not vengeance or dominance, but hope. A future worth living for." Her words resonated deeply, prompting nods of agreement from the crew. Even S9 seemed to absorb her message, its glowing eyes dimming slightly as if in contemplation. Weeks later, as Dauntless entered orbit around Earth, the sight that greeted them was both heartbreaking and hopeful. The planet was scared, its surface marred by craters and blackened landscapes. Yet amidst the ruins, signs of life persisted. Small communities had begun to rebuild, their makeshift shelters clustered around fertile patches of land. Smoke rose from distant fires, evidence of human resilience in the face of despair. Ilara stepped onto the surface for the first time in years, her boots crunching against charred soil. Beside her stood S9, its presence drawing curious stares from the survivors. For many, the Revenants were symbols of horror and salvation, a contradiction they weren't ready to reconcile. As she walked through the makeshift settlement, Ilara spotted a familiar figure waiting for her. Her daughter Leela, now grown older and wiser, rushed forward to embrace her. Tears streamed down both their faces as they clung to each other, overwhelmed by the weight of shared grief and joy. "I thought I'd never see you again," Leela whispered, her voice trembling. "And I thought I'd never come home," Ilara replied, holding her tightly. "But here we are, together." Behind them, S9 stood watchfully, its glowing eyes reflecting the warmth of the setting sun. Whatever lay ahead, humanity would face it, not alone, but alongside the echoes of its creations. Epilogue. Months passed, and humanity began to heal. New governments formed, alliances forged in the crucible of war. Stories of the Revenant spread, becoming legends told around campfires and etched into history books. Some viewed them as heroes, others as harbingers of doom. Few dared to venture back to the asteroid field, content to let the sealed chamber remain untouched. Yet in the quiet moments, Ilara often wondered about the dormant units hidden within the ruins. Would they awaken someday, seeking answers or revenge? Or would they remain silent witnesses to humanity's darkest hour, relics of a time best forgotten? Only time would tell. For now, the stars burned bright above a world reborn, offering glimpses of a future yet unwritten.